In the heart of New York City, where skyscrapers kissed the clouds and luxury was a way of life, there lived a woman named Clara. She wasn't someone who craved attention or chased after fame. In fact, she was quite the opposite, simple, humble, and content with her quiet little world. But fate had other plans for her when she met Ethan, a man whose name was whispered in boardrooms and splashed across headlines. He was the CEO of one of the biggest tech companies in the world, a man known for his charm, ambition, and larger-than-life presence. Their marriage seemed like something out of a fairy tale, at least on the surface. To the outside world, they were the perfect couple. Ethan, the powerful tycoon, and Clara, the graceful partner by his side. People admired how their personalities complemented each other. While Ethan thrived in the spotlight, Clara preferred staying behind the scenes, tending to their small garden, reading books, and finding joy in the simplest things life had to offer. But beneath the glitz and glamour, their relationship was far from perfect. Over time, cracks began to show. Ethan's demanding schedule meant he was almost always working, traveling, or attending high-profile events. Clara tried her best to adapt to this new lifestyle, but deep down, she missed the warmth of connection, the comfort of shared moments, and the intimacy that made a marriage real. She often felt like an outsider in her own life, watching as Ethan became more consumed by his empire while she faded into the background. One evening, Ethan decided to host a grand gala at the Regency Grand, a five-star hotel that was practically his second home. It was one of those extravagant parties where everyone who mattered in the business world showed up. The elite, the influencers, the power players. Clara attended reluctantly, dressed in an elegant gown that she didn't feel comfortable wearing. As the night wore on, she found herself standing alone near the bar, sipping water and observing the crowd. The room buzzed with laughter, chatter, and clinking glasses, but Clara felt miles away from it all. At one point, Ethan joined her briefly. Sensing her unease, he asked if everything was okay. Clara hesitated before speaking. "I just wish we could spend more time together," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the noise. "It feels like we're drifting apart." Ethan frowned, clearly irritated. "Drifting apart? Clara, I've given you everything, luxury, security, a life most people can only dream of, and yet, you still complain?" His tone was sharp, dismissive, cutting through her like a knife. Before she could respond, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, stunned and hurt. The words replayed in her mind long after he was gone. How could someone who claimed to love her make her feel so small? Clara's chest tightened as tears welled up in her eyes. She couldn't bear to stay any longer. Grabbing her purse, she slipped out of the ballroom and headed toward the elevator. When the doors opened, she stepped into the lobby hoping to catch a cab and go back to their suite to collect her things. But as she approached the front desk, two security guards blocked her path. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but Mr. Bennett has instructed us not to allow you access to the suite," one of them said firmly. Clara froze, unable to believe what she was hearing. "What do you mean? That's my room too," she protested, her voice trembling. But the guards remained unmoved, their expressions blank. Humiliated and heartbroken, Clara realized what had happened. Ethan had kicked her out, right then and there, without warning or explanation. As she stood in the opulent lobby, surrounded by marble floors and crystal chandeliers, Clara felt smaller than ever. The luxurious setting around her suddenly felt cold and suffocating. All eyes were on her now, curious glances darting her way as whispers filled the air. For a moment she considered arguing, demanding answers, but pride stopped her. Instead, she turned around and walked out of the hotel, her head held high despite the storm raging inside her. Little did she know this humiliating incident would set off a chain reaction that would change both their lives forever. Back at the hotel, news of what happened spread quickly among the staff. Employees talked about how Ethan Bennett, once seen as a generous benefactor, had treated his wife so callously. When the story reached him, Ethan reacted impulsively. Furious at the gossip, he stormed into the management office and fired every single employee involved in handling Clara's removal, from front desk clerks to senior managers. But firing people wouldn't fix the damage done. If anything, it only made matters worse. Word of his actions leaked to the press, painting him as a ruthless tyrant who valued control above all else. His carefully crafted image began to crumble under the weight of scandal. Meanwhile, Clara retreated to her childhood home in a quiet suburb, seeking refuge from the chaos. There, in the familiar surroundings of her past, Clara allowed herself to process everything that had happened. She avoided calls, ignored messages, and refused to engage with anyone trying to pull her back into the drama. What she needed most was space, to breathe, to think, and to figure out how to move forward. Little did she know this painful chapter in her life would become the catalyst for a remarkable transformation. And so, Clara's journey began. Not as the wife of a billionaire CEO, but as a woman determined to rediscover herself and reclaim her independence. The fallout from that fateful night at the Regency Grand rippled far beyond the hotel's gilded walls. News of what happened spread like wildfire, not just among the staff, but also through the corridors of Ethan's company and into the public domain. The employees who had witnessed Clara being turned away were stunned by the cruelty of it all. They whispered about how Ethan, a man they once admired for his vision and leadership, could treat someone so close to him with such disdain. Some felt anger, others pity, but everyone agreed this wasn't the Ethan they thought they knew. When Ethan got wind of the gossip circulating within his own organization, he lost control. His temper flared in ways that even those closest to him hadn't seen before. He stormed into the hotel's management office, his face red with fury, and demanded to know why his private matters had become fodder for idle chatter. Without listening to any explanations, he fired everyone remotely involved in handling Clara's removal, from the front desk clerks who relayed the message to the security guards who enforced it, right up to the senior managers overseeing operations. It was an impulsive, reckless move, one driven entirely by ego and fear of losing face. But firing people didn't solve anything. If anything, it made things worse. Word of his actions leaked to the media almost immediately. Journalists pounced on the story, painting Ethan as a ruthless tyrant who cared more about protecting his image than treating people with basic decency. Headlines screamed phrases like CEO gone wild and power couple's ugly split, accompanied by photos of Ethan looking stern at corporate events and Clara walking out of the hotel alone. Social media erupted with debates about wealth, privilege, and accountability. People began questioning whether Ethan's success had come at the cost of his humanity. Amidst all this chaos, Clara retreated to her childhood home, a cozy little house tucked away in a quiet suburb. It was a place where she had grown up surrounded by love and simplicity, far removed from the glitz and glamour of Ethan's world. For days, she stayed indoors, refusing to answer calls or respond to messages. Friends, family members, and even lawyers reached out, offering advice or trying to convince her to take legal action against Ethan. But Clara wasn't interested in revenge. All she wanted was peace, a chance to process everything that had happened and figure out what came next. Her mind replayed the events of that night over and over again. She couldn't shake the image of herself standing in the hotel lobby, humiliated and abandoned. The memory of Ethan's dismissive tone when she expressed her feelings haunted her. How could someone she loved so deeply treat her with such contempt? And why did it feel like everyone else saw her pain before she fully understood it herself? As the days turned into weeks, Clara slowly began to emerge from her shell. She spent hours tending to her mother's old garden, pulling weeds and planting flowers. There was something therapeutic about working with her hands, about nurturing life instead of dwelling on loss. She also started reading again, an activity she hadn't had much time for during her marriage. Books became her escape, transporting her to worlds where characters faced challenges, found strength, and emerged stronger. One afternoon, while flipping through a magazine, Clara stumbled upon an article written by a journalist named Sophie Meyer. Sophie had covered the scandal surrounding Ethan and Clara's separation, but unlike many others, She approached the story with empathy and nuance. Her piece highlighted the pressures faced by women in high-profile relationships and questioned whether society placed too much emphasis on material wealth over emotional well-being. Reading those words struck a chord deep within Clara. For the first time since the incident, she felt seen, not as the scorned wife of a billionaire, but as a human being navigating heartbreak and uncertainty. Encouraged by a friend, Clara decided to reach out to Sophie. She wrote a short email, thanking her for the thoughtful coverage and sharing a bit about her own perspective. To Clara's surprise, Sophie responded almost immediately. The two arranged to meet for coffee at a small cafe near Clara's neighborhood. Over steaming cups of tea, they talked for hours. Sophie listened intently as Clara opened up about her marriage, her struggles with feeling invisible, and her hopes for the future. By the end of their conversation, Sophie gently suggested that Clara consider sharing her story publicly. At first, Clara hesitated. The idea of putting herself in the spotlight terrified her. She had spent years avoiding attention, preferring to blend into the background. But Sophie assured her that telling her truth could inspire others going through similar experiences. "You don't have to do it for revenge or validation," Sophie said. "Do it because your voice matters. Because there are people out there who need to hear that they're not alone." After much deliberation, Clara agreed to sit down for an interview. She poured her heart into every word, speaking honestly about the highs and lows of her marriage, the moment she realized she deserved better, and the steps she was taking to rebuild her life. When the article was published, it resonated deeply with readers. Comments poured in from women and men around the world, sharing their own stories of resilience and gratitude for Clara's courage. Public opinion shifted dramatically, with many calling for accountability from powerful figures like Ethan. Meanwhile, Ethan's empire continued to crumble. His erratic behavior following the scandal raised serious questions about his leadership capabilities. Key executives resigned, citing ethical concerns. Investors pulled out, lawsuits piled up, and morale within the company plummeted. Despite hiring expensive PR teams and launching flashy charitable initiatives, Ethan struggled to regain trust. Every attempt to win back Clara's forgiveness fell flat. She refused to engage, knowing that reconciliation wasn't possible or healthy for either of them. Back in her quiet suburb, Clara found solace in unexpected places. She started volunteering at a local shelter, serving meals to families in need and listening to their stories. The experience reminded her of the importance of community and connection, something she had missed dearly during her marriage. She also began writing, jotting down thoughts and reflections in a journal late at night. What started as a personal exercise soon evolved into something bigger, a memoir chronicling her journey from a naive bride to a woman reclaiming her independence. Little did Clara know, this decision would change her life forever. Writing gave her a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. It allowed her to make sense of her past while envisioning a brighter future. As she typed the final lines of her manuscript, she felt a wave of liberation wash over her. She wasn't the same person who had walked out of the Regency Grand months ago. She was stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace whatever came next. And so, as the world watched Ethan's downfall unfold, Clara quietly embarked on a new chapter, one defined not by wealth or status, but by authenticity, resilience, and hope. Clara's life began to take on a new rhythm. Each morning she woke up early, brewed herself a cup of tea, and sat by the window overlooking her garden. The sunlight streaming through the curtains felt warmer now, as if it carried a promise of better days ahead. She spent hours tending to the plants, watching tiny buds bloom into vibrant flowers. There was something magical about nurturing life. It reminded her that even after the harshest storms, growth was still possible. Her memoir became a lifeline during this period. Writing wasn't easy. There were days when memories overwhelmed, her bringing tears to her eyes. But with each word she typed, Clara felt lighter, as though she was shedding layers of pain and rediscovering who she truly was. The process forced her to confront truths she'd buried for years, about her marriage, her self-worth, and the kind of life she wanted moving forward. By the time she finished the manuscript, she realized she had done more than just write a book. She had reclaimed her voice, When the memoir hit shelves, it sent ripples across the globe. Readers connected deeply with Clara's honesty and vulnerability. Her story resonated not because it was extraordinary, but because it was relatable. Countless women, and men too, reached out to share how her words had inspired them to leave toxic relationships, pursue their dreams, or simply believe in themselves again. Letters poured in from strangers, thanking her for giving them courage when they needed it most. Some wrote about walking away from controlling partners. Others talked about finding strength in solitude. Each message filled Clara with gratitude, knowing her journey had touched lives in ways she never imagined. The media took notice as well. Talk shows invited her to speak about her experiences, and newspapers ran feature stories highlighting her transformation. Clara approached these opportunities with humility, always steering conversations toward hope rather than bitterness. "I'm not here to tear anyone down," she told one interviewer. "I'm here to remind people that no matter where you are in life, you have the power to start over." Her newfound platform also opened doors to causes close to her heart. Clara began collaborating with organizations supporting victims of domestic abuse, donating portions of her earnings to fund shelters and counseling services. She traveled to local community centers, speaking to groups of women about resilience and self-worth. Her talks weren't polished speeches. They were heartfelt conversations, filled with laughter, tears, and moments of raw authenticity. People left feeling empowered, as if they'd been given permission to dream bigger and live bolder. Meanwhile, Ethan's world continued to unravel. His attempts to salvage his reputation grew increasingly desperate. He appeared on television shows, pleading for forgiveness and promising to change. In interviews, he spoke about regret, claiming he had learned valuable lessons from his mistakes. But actions spoke louder than words, and many remained skeptical. Behind closed doors, Ethan's behavior hadn't improved. He lashed out at employees, blamed others for his failures, and isolated himself further. Friends and colleagues distanced themselves, unwilling to endure his volatile temper any longer. Rumors swirled about his financial troubles. Investors pulled out, lawsuits mounted, and key executives resigned, citing ethical concerns. The company he had built from scratch teetered on the brink of collapse. Yet, despite the chaos surrounding him, Ethan refused to step away from the spotlight. Instead, he launched a series of charitable initiatives, hoping to win back public favor. These efforts reeked of insincerity, doing little to repair the damage he had caused. Clara watched from afar, choosing not to engage. She understood that Ethan's downfall wasn't hers to fix. What mattered most was focusing on her own path and using her voice to uplift others. Still, there were moments when she wondered what had driven him to act the way he did. Was it insecurity, fear of losing control, or simply the weight of living up to an image that wasn't real? Whatever the reason, Clara knew she couldn't let it define her anymore. She had moved past anger and resentment, replacing them with compassion, not just for Ethan, but for herself. One day, while volunteering at a shelter, Clara met a young woman named Lisa. She was barely 20, with wide eyes full of fear and determination. Lisa confided in Clara about escaping an abusive relationship, unsure if she could ever trust herself or others again. Listening to her story, Clara saw echoes of her younger self, the same doubts, the same longing for freedom. Without hesitation, she shared her own journey, offering words of encouragement and practical advice. By the end of their conversation, Lisa hugged Clara tightly, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "You've given me hope." That moment stayed with Clara long after she left the shelter. It reminded her why she had chosen to step into the spotlight, to be a beacon of light for those trapped in darkness. Every person she helped, every life she touched, reinforced her belief that kindness and courage could create ripples of change. As months passed, Clara found joy in the simplest things: cooking meals for neighbors, taking long walks in the park, and spending weekends painting landscapes inspired by her garden. Her home, once a quiet refuge, transformed into a hub of activity. Friends dropped by unannounced, drawn to her warmth and wisdom. Strangers became acquaintances, and acquaintances became family. For the first time in years, Clara felt truly alive. She also started dating again, not because she felt pressured to, but because she deserved love. This time, however, she approached relationships differently. She set boundaries, communicated openly, and prioritized mutual respect. When she eventually met someone special, a kind-hearted teacher named Daniel who cherished her for who she was, not what she represented, she knew she had found something rare and beautiful. Their connection wasn't based on grand gestures or material wealth. It was rooted in shared values, laughter, and unwavering support. Looking back, Clara marveled at how far she had come. From the woman standing humiliated in a hotel lobby to the author, advocate, and friend she had become, her journey was proof that resilience could turn even the darkest chapters into stories of triumph. And though scars from her past would always remain, they no longer defined her. They were reminders of battles fought and won, of lessons learned and applied. Life wasn't perfect, nor did Clara expect it to be, but it was rich with meaning. She had discovered a truth that eluded her for so long. Happiness didn't come from external validation or societal approval. It came from within, nurtured by authenticity, purpose, and love. As she stood in her garden one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, Clara smiled. She was finally free and ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. Ethan's life had become a whirlwind of desperation and regret. The man who once commanded boardrooms with confidence now found himself isolated, both personally and professionally. His attempts to fix his crumbling empire only seemed to make things worse. Every move he made was scrutinized, every decision questioned. Employees whispered about his erratic behavior behind closed doors, while shareholders grew increasingly impatient. The company that bore his name, a symbol of success and innovation, was teetering on the edge of collapse. But Ethan's struggles weren't limited to his career. On a personal level, he was haunted by the choices he had made. Memories of Clara lingered in his mind like shadows, refusing to fade. He replayed their final moments together over and over, the way she had looked at him with quiet dignity as he dismissed her feelings, the hurt in her eyes when security guards turned her away from their hotel suite. Those images tormented him, gnawing at his conscience. For the first time in years, Ethan began to question not just his actions but the person he had become. He tried reaching out to Clara multiple times, sending letters, emails, and even flowers to her childhood home. But she never responded. Her silence spoke volumes, cutting deeper than any words could. It wasn't just rejection, it was clarity. Clara had moved on, leaving behind the toxic relationship that had defined so much of her life. And yet, Ethan couldn't let go. He'd convinced himself that if he could just explain, apologize, or somehow prove he had changed, maybe she would forgive him. One chilly autumn morning, Ethan showed up unannounced at Clara's doorstep. His tailored suit was replaced by a simple sweater and jeans, an attempt to appear more approachable. His face was pale, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. When Clara opened the door, she froze for a moment, caught off guard by his sudden appearance. She didn't invite him in, but she didn't slam the door either. Instead, she stood there, arms crossed, waiting to see what he would say. "I'm sorry," Ethan blurted out, his voice trembling. "I know I screwed up. I took you for granted and I threw away the best thing in my life. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know how sorry I am." Clara studied him carefully, searching for sincerity in his expression. She saw pain etched into his features, but also something else. Fear. Fear of losing everything he had worked so hard to build. Fear of being alone. For a brief moment she felt a pang of sympathy, but it quickly gave way to resolve. This wasn't about guilt or pity. It was about accountability. "I believe you mean what you're saying," Clara replied softly, her tone measured. "But apologizing doesn't undo the damage, Ethan. You treated me like I didn't matter. Not just that night at the hotel, but for years before it. And no matter how sorry you are, you can't fix that for me." Her words hit him like a punch, to the gut. He opened his mouth to argue, to defend himself, but nothing came out. What could he say? She was right. Everything she said was true. The weight of his mistakes pressed down on him heavier than ever. "I don't hate you," Clara continued after a pause. "I feel sorry for you. You've spent your whole life chasing success, thinking it would make you happy. But look where it's gotten you. You've lost your company, your reputation, and most importantly, yourself." Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes, but he didn't try to wipe them away. "What do I do?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "How do I fix this?" Clara hesitated, then shook her head gently. "You can't fix me, Ethan. Only, you can fix yourself. Start by being honest with others, but especially with yourself. Take responsibility for your actions and stop blaming everyone else for your problems. Maybe someday you'll find peace, but it won't come from me." With that, she stepped back and closed the door, leaving Ethan standing on the porch. He wanted to knock again, to beg her to reconsider, but something stopped him. Perhaps it was the realization that she was right. Perhaps it was the understanding that he had burned too many bridges to turn back. Whatever it was, Ethan knew one thing for certain: his life would never be the same. In the weeks that followed, Ethan disappeared from the public eye. Rumors swirled about his whereabouts, with some claiming he had fled the country to escape. Lawsuits, while others speculated he had checked into rehab. The truth was less dramatic but equally telling. Ethan sold his mansion, liquidated his assets, and moved to a remote village far removed from the glitz and glamour of city life. There he started teaching computer skills to underprivileged children, using his expertise to give back in ways he never had before. Whether Ethan truly changed remained uncertain. Some doubted his motives, believing he was simply trying to rebuild his image. Others thought he might finally be seeking redemption. Regardless of his intentions, his absence allowed the world to focus on more pressing matters, including the remarkable journey of Clara. Clara, meanwhile, continued thriving in her new life. Her memoir became a global phenomenon, sparking conversations about love, resilience, and self-worth. Readers praised her ability to confront painful truths without bitterness, offering hope to those trapped in similar situations. Her advocacy work expanded, taking her to conferences and community centers around the world. She inspired countless individuals to break free from toxic relationships and embrace their authentic selves. At home, Clara found joy in the little things. Her garden flourished, bursting with colors that mirrored her renewed spirit. She spent weekends painting landscapes, capturing the beauty of nature on canvas. Friends and family filled her days with laughter and support, creating a sense of belonging she hadn't felt in years. And then there was Daniel, the kind-hearted teacher who had entered her life unexpectedly. Their relationship blossomed naturally, built on trust, respect, and shared values. Together, they created a life filled with warmth and simplicity, far removed from the chaos of Ethan's world. Despite all she had achieved, Clara remained humble. She often reminded herself and others that healing wasn't linear. There were still nights when old memories crept in, stirring emotions she thought she had left behind. But instead of running from them, she embraced them as part of her story. They were reminders of how far she had come, of the strength she had discovered within herself. As time went on, Clara realized that forgiveness wasn't about excusing someone's behavior. It was about freeing yourself from the burden of anger and resentment. She forgave Ethan, not because he deserved it, but because holding on to bitterness only weighed her down. Letting go allowed her to focus on the present, to cherish the life she had built, and to dream of the future. And so, as Ethan faded into obscurity, Clara stepped fully into the light. She wasn't the same woman who had walked out of the Regency, grand months ago. She was stronger, wiser, and braver, a testament to the power of resilience and self-discovery. Her journey proved that even in the darkest moments, there is always a path forward. All it takes is courage to take the first step. Months turned into years, and life moved on for both Clara and Ethan in ways neither of them could have predicted. While Ethan's name faded from headlines, Clara's star continued to rise. Her memoir, once a personal project born out of pain, became a global movement. Book clubs discussed it passionately, schools included it in their reading lists, and organizations used it as a tool to spark conversations about resilience and self-worth. Clara wasn't just an author anymore. She was a symbol of hope, a living reminder that even the hardest journeys can lead to beautiful destinations. Her advocacy work took her to places she never imagined she'd visit, from crowded auditoriums in bustling cities to makeshift stages. In remote villages, Clara shared her story with anyone willing to listen. She spoke not as someone who had all the answers, but as someone who understood what it meant to feel lost and alone. Her talks were raw and heartfelt, filled with moments of laughter, tears, and quiet reflection. People left feeling inspired, knowing they weren't alone in their struggles. One particular event stood out among the many. It was held in a small community center in a town ravaged by poverty and unemployment. The room was packed with women, some young, some old, all carrying stories of hardship etched into their faces. Clara sat on a wooden chair at the front, dressed simply in jeans and a sweater. As she began speaking, her voice soft yet steady, the room fell silent. She didn't sugarcoat her experiences or pretend everything had been easy. Instead, she told them about the nights she cried herself to sleep, the days she doubted her ability to move forward, and the moments when she chose courage over fear. "I'm not here to tell you it gets easier," she said, leaning forward slightly, "because sometimes it doesn't. But I'm here to tell you this. Every step you take toward healing matters. Every time you choose yourself, you're building something stronger than whatever broke you." By the end of her talk, the audience erupted into applause, but it wasn't the clapping that stayed with Clara. It was the hugs. Women lined up to thank her, sharing snippets of their own lives and asking for advice. One woman, barely in her 20s, hugged Clara tightly and whispered, "You've shown me I'm worth more than what they told me." That moment reminded Clara why she did what she did, not for fame or recognition, but to remind others of their inherent value. Back home, Clara's life blossomed in ways she hadn't anticipated. Her garden became a sanctuary, a place where she found peace and perspective. She often invited friends and neighbors over for tea, turning casual gatherings into meaningful conversations. Her house, once a quiet refuge, transformed into a hub of connection and joy. People gravitated toward her warmth, drawn to the authenticity she exuded. Daniel, too, played a significant role in her happiness. Their relationship deepened with time, built on mutual respect and shared values. They weren't perfect. They argued occasionally like any couple, but they always came back to each other, choosing love over pride. Together, they created traditions: Sunday morning hikes, Friday night movie marathons, and spontaneous road trips to explore hidden gems in nearby towns. Life with Daniel was simple, grounded, and full of laughter. For the first time, Clara felt truly loved, not because of what she brought to the table, but because of who she was. As Clara thrived, whispers about Ethan's whereabouts resurfaced occasionally. Some claimed he had reinvented himself, dedicating his life to helping underprivileged children learn computer skills. Others dismissed these reports as attempts to polish his tarnished image. The truth lay somewhere in between. Ethan had indeed relocated to a remote village, trading luxury for simplicity. He lived modestly, teaching coding classes and mentoring kids who lacked access to education. Whether his actions stemmed from genuine remorse or a desire to rewrite his legacy remained unclear. What was evident, however, was the toll his past mistakes had taken on him. Friends reported that Ethan rarely smiled anymore, his once charismatic demeanor replaced by a quiet melancholy. He avoided talking about his former life, focusing instead on the present. His students admired him, seeing him as a mentor rather than a fallen tycoon. Yet, despite his efforts to rebuild, Ethan couldn't escape the weight of his history. At night, he often sat alone, staring at old photos of Clara, wondering if things could have been different. Clara, for her part, thought about Ethan less frequently now. When she did, it wasn't with anger or bitterness, but with a sense of detachment. She no longer saw him as the man who had hurt her. Instead, she viewed him as someone struggling to find redemption. Occasionally, she wondered if he would ever succeed. if he would finally confront the emptiness that had driven him to make such reckless choices. But those thoughts were fleeting. Clara had learned to prioritize her own healing over speculating about Ethan's fate. Her focus shifted to giving back. She started a foundation aimed at supporting women rebuilding their lives after toxic relationships. The organization offered resources ranging from counseling services to job training programs, empowering women to regain control of their futures. Clara poured her heart into the initiative, traveling across the country to meet beneficiaries and hear their stories. Each success story fueled her determination to keep going, to reach as many people as possible. One day, while visiting a shelter, supported by her foundation, Clara met a woman named Lynn. She was in her 40s with weary eyes and calloused hands that spoke of years of hard work. Lynn hesitated before approaching Clara, clutching a worn copy of her memoir. "This book saved me," Lynn admitted, her voice trembling. "It made me realize I deserved better. Thank you for writing it." Clara smiled, feeling a lump form in her throat. "Thank you for having the courage to start over," she replied softly. "That's the real victory." Moments like these reinforced Clara's belief in the power of storytelling. Sharing her journey hadn't just helped her heal, it had created ripples of change, touching lives in ways she never imagined. Her story proved that vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was strength. By embracing her scars, she had inspired others to do the same. As the years passed, Clara reflected on how far she had come. From the woman standing humiliated in a hotel lobby, to the advocate, author, and friend she had become, her transformation was nothing short of extraordinary. She had faced heartbreak, betrayal, and uncertainty, yet she emerged stronger and wiser. Her journey taught her invaluable lessons about resilience, self-worth, and the importance of surrounding herself with people who uplifted her. Life wasn't without its challenges. There were still days when doubts crept in, reminding her of the battles she had fought. But Clara had learned to embrace them as part of her growth. She celebrated her victories, no matter how small, and leaned on her support system during tough times. Her scars, both visible and invisible, were badges of honor, proof that she had survived and thrived. And so, as Clara looked ahead, she did so with gratitude and optimism. She knew the road wouldn't always be smooth, but she also knew she had the tools to navigate whatever came her way. Her story was far from over, and she couldn't wait to see where it would lead next. Years had passed since Clara walked out of that 5-star hotel, humiliated and heartbroken, yet determined to reclaim her life. Today, she stood on a stage in front of thousands of people at an international women's empowerment conference. The room buzzed with energy as attendees eagerly awaited her keynote speech. Clara took a deep breath, adjusting the microphone, and looked out at the sea of faces before her. Some were smiling, others holding pens ready to jot down notes, but all shared one thing, a hunger for inspiration. "Good morning," she began, her voice calm but filled with warmth. "I want to start by saying thank you for being here today, for choosing to show up not just physically but emotionally. Because showing up is hard. It takes courage to face challenges, to step into uncertainty, and to believe that things can get better." Her words resonated deeply. She went on to share snippets of her journey, the nights she cried herself to sleep after leaving Ethan, the mornings she woke up wondering if she'd made the right decision, and the days she spent rediscovering who she truly was. But she didn't dwell on the pain. Instead, she focused on the lessons she learned along the way. "One of the biggest truths I've come to understand is this: we are so much stronger than we think. Life will throw curveballs. Sometimes they'll knock us down, sometimes they'll leave scars, but every experience shapes us, and it's up to us to decide what we do with those experiences." The audience hung on to her every word, nodding in agreement or wiping away tears. Clara's authenticity shone through, making her relatable despite the vast differences in their lives. She wasn't just speaking about her own story, she was validating theirs too. After the speech, Clara mingled with attendees, posing for photos and signing copies of her memoir. A young woman approached her, clutching a tattered copy of the book. Her hands trembled slightly as she handed it over. "This changed my life," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I left a toxic relationship because of your story. Thank you for giving me the strength to walk away." Clara smiled softly, taking the book and writing a short message inside. "You did the hard work," she replied. "I just reminded you of what you already knew, that you deserve better." The woman hugged her tightly before stepping aside, allowing the next person in line to meet Clara. These moments, more than anything else, fueled her passion for advocacy. Knowing her words could spark change kept her going, even on tough days. Meanwhile, whispers about Ethan continued to surface occasionally. Rumors suggested he had found some measure of peace in his new life, dedicating himself to teaching underprivileged children computer skills. Whether his transformation was genuine or merely an attempt to repair his shattered reputation remained unclear. What mattered most was that he had stepped away from the spotlight, allowing others to focus on healing and growth. Back home, Clara's life flourished in ways she never imagined. Her foundation grew exponentially, reaching women across the globe. Counseling centers opened in underserved communities. Job training programs helped countless individuals secure stable employment. And scholarships enabled young girls to pursue education without financial burdens. Every success story reinforced Clara's belief in the power of collective effort. Change wasn't something one person could achieve alone. It took a village. Daniel remained her rock, supporting her dreams while pursuing his own passions. Their relationship evolved into a partnership built on trust, respect, and shared values. Together they explored new hobbies, traveled to places neither had dreamed of visiting, and created traditions that grounded them. Life with Daniel was simple yet fulfilling, a stark contrast to the opulence Clara once endured. On weekends, Clara often invited friends over for casual gatherings. They laughed, shared meals, and talked late into the night about everything from politics to personal growth. Her home became a safe space where people felt comfortable being themselves, free from judgment or pretense. Neighbors stopped by unannounced, knowing they'd always find a warm welcome and a cup of tea waiting. Her garden, too, thrived under her care. Flowers bloomed in vibrant colors, filling the air with sweet fragrances. Birds chirped happily, flitting between branches as sunlight filtered through the leaves. Clara found solace there, tending to plants and watching nature unfold its beauty. It was a reminder that life, like gardens, required patience, nurturing, and resilience. As time went on, Clara realized forgiveness wasn't about forgetting or excusing someone's actions. It was about releasing the hold those actions had on her heart. She forgave Ethan, not because he deserved it, but because carrying resentment only weighed her down. Letting go allowed her to fully embrace the present, to cherish the life she had built and to dream of the future. Looking back, Clara marveled at how far she had come. From the woman standing alone in a hotel lobby, feeling small and invisible, to the advocate inspiring thousands worldwide, her journey was proof that resilience could turn even the darkest chapters into stories of triumph. She had faced heartbreak, betrayal, and self-doubt, yet emerged stronger, wiser, and braver. Her memoir continued to inspire readers, sparking conversations about love, independence, and self-worth. Schools included it in their curriculums. Organizations used it to train counselors, and book clubs discussed it passionately. Clara's story transcended borders, reminding people everywhere that no matter how broken they felt, healing was possible, and so as Clara looked ahead, she did so with gratitude and hope. She knew life wouldn't always be smooth sailing. There would still be storms to weather, but she also knew she had the tools to navigate them. Her scars, both visible and invisible, were reminders of battles fought and won. They were badges of honor, proof that she had survived and thrived. Her final reflection came during a quiet evening at home. Sitting by the window, sipping tea, she watched the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. Life hadn't turned out the way she once imagined, but it was richer, fuller, and more meaningful than she ever thought possible. She smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. Clara's journey wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to everyone who had been touched by her story. Through vulnerability, courage, and unwavering determination, she had rewritten her narrative. And in doing so, she had shown the world that even in the darkest moments, light could guide us forward. The end.